which brings us to our next speaker, who is Erin Whittingham. Thank you so much for joining us, Erin. She is from the Nature Network. She's an organizer with Nature Canada. Erin joined Nature Canada as an organizer in September 2020, and her passion is really for an equitable and just world. And this led her to get involved in energy, climate, and degrowth movements in Ottawa, Canada, and in Europe as well. She's passionate about empowering climate change and change at the local level. And this local change should be felt across the country. She feels very hopeful about the challenges that we face today because of what's going on, especially like the groups and organizations and youth on this call. And she's working through collective means to find solutions and take action. Thank you so much for joining us, Erin, and we'd love to hear from you.
Hi, thank you. Thank you so much, Lisa, for that lovely introduction. Happy International Day of Youth to everybody watching. Thank you to the Foundation for a Path Forward for inviting me to speak, and to Starfish Canada. I'm excited to be here, so I'm just going to go ahead and start sharing my screen. There we go. Okay. So as Yusuf said, my name is Erin Whittingham, and I am a Nature Network organizer with Nature Canada. Before I begin, I would just like to pay my respect to the Algonquin peoples, who were the original caretakers of Ottawa and whose traditional unceded and stolen territory that I call home. And I would just want to share a bit about why I chose this photo here on the right of the oak tree. So this is a pretty mighty oak, and a few years ago it was damaged in a pretty bad storm. You can see that a huge chunk of it was ripped off in the winter storm, and yet this tree is still expected to live for many, many more years. And I just see so much strength in this tree, and I see so much strength in the Indigenous peoples and communities across the country who continue to face ongoing violence as a result of colonization. And so I would just also like to pay my respect to all the Indigenous peoples across Canada, as well as say that I recognize my responsibility to decolonizing these lands, as well as excited to be a part of doing this work. So at Nature Canada, just a little bit about who we are and what we do. We are an environmental charity, and we have been one of Canada's voices for nature for the last 80 years. We work to ensure solutions to the dual crises of biodiversity loss and climate change is a government priority at all levels of government. And we do this because we believe that nature lovers need action on climate change. To reverse species collapse and restore the natural world, nature lovers need the 2020s to be a breakthrough decade for action on climate change. And alternatively, the climate change movement needs nature lovers. Without the help of the nature community, which is a very large community across the country, we believe that the climate change movement will struggle to create that groundswell of action that we need to address climate change. And so we are out there on the ground telling nature groups we need to seize the day. And that's what we've been doing. We've been building a nature network of around 1,000 nature groups across the country, working together on some different programs. So we've been organizing, mobilizing, and engaging these 1,000 or so nature groups on programs such as nature-based climate solutions and reforestation. And that's my main role, is organizing on reforestation and working with nature groups and local community groups who want to engage their municipalities on the federal 2 billion tree program. We also have a bird-friendly city program, which is a certification that nature groups can work with their municipalities on to make their cities more friendly for birds. We have a neighborhood program that focuses on getting youth into nature, urban nature, with a special attention to supporting racialized youth in nature. And lastly, we have a protected areas campaigns that focus on terrestrial and oceans and ensuring that the federal government meets its target of 25% of land and oceans protected by 2025, and then further 30% protected by 2030. So those are just a few of the programs that, that we are organizing nature groups on. And right now we have started to do some research that looks at the relationship between race, income, and tree canopy cover. And this is a project that we are just starting to develop. But this research idea actually came about as a result of research that was presented to us by Jacqueline Scott and Ambika Tanidi. And there's a lot going on here on this, on the screen here, and I'll walk us all through it. But essentially the research looks at Toronto's demographics and urban forest distribution. And so if we look at map number 1, this shows where people live in Toronto based off of the color of their skin. And the blue areas are areas that are predominantly white, and the orange and red areas, those are communities that are predominantly Black, Indigenous, people of color. In map number 2, we have family income. So the green areas are predominantly high income earners, and then the red and orange are the low income earners, and yellow are moderate. The yellow areas are moderate income earners. And lastly, map number 3, this shows tree canopy cover. So green, high tree canopy cover, and red and orange, low tree canopy cover. But what we see when we start putting these maps together is the story that predominantly white neighborhoods that are high income earners have the highest tree canopy cover in the city. And when you start looking at the other side of that story, you see that the neighborhoods which are predominantly Black, Indigenous, people of color, moderate to low income, they do not have high tree canopy cover. They have low tree canopy cover. So this is environmental racism. This is, we know all the benefits that trees provide, health, cultural, social, economic, environmental, so many different benefits. We know these things, and yet we still see communities, racialized communities, being underserved by these benefits. So we are planning to do this research because we hope to use this research to inform our organizing efforts to be able to go out into communities and say, hey, like, let's, who wants to do something about this? But it's important to also to correct these things, to change these things in a way that doesn't lead to gentrification. So that's something that the research is also going to investigate. And we see this research as so important because if colonization is an economic project, and if our economy and its pursuit of economic growth is at the core of our environmental crises, then we need to dismantle colonialism and racism. We need to do this because it is imperative if we are to reverse the twin crises of climate change and biodiversity loss. And this quote that from Janella Point from Stelladin First Nation, diversity is not just a strength, and anti-racism is not a burden. It's the only way we can address the root causes of the climate crisis. Anti-racism is how we will win. And I love this quote. I find it so empowering. I find it exciting. I know the talk coming up next around mental health and climate change is, it's such a real important conversation that we need to be having. But when I read this quote, I find myself feeling excited rather than disheartened. And so I hope that you also feel some of that uplifting enthusiasm when you read this quote as well. So just before I sign off and conclude, I wanted to share a Work to Grow program that we're offering in collaboration with Parks Canada. And essentially, it's a 50% wage subsidy to employ BIPOC youth and nature organizations. And this program came about as a result that a recognition that racialized youth face unique barriers in finding jobs in the nature sector. And the link is there, and check it out if you're a job seeker or if you are an employer and looking to get some new employment or new employees. Hopefully this can help in that process. So thank you so much for having me speak today, Youssef, and the whole team that put on this this evening. If you have any questions or comments and want to reach out, my email address is there. And yeah, happy International Day of Youth to everybody. Thanks very much.
Thank you, Erin. Thank you for the amazing work that you're doing as well as Nature. It's been great working with you guys. I really appreciate how you're sharing practical solutions and the research you've shown. I will say it's shocking to see that even now, how environmental racism is impacting communities. Those who need it most aren't receiving the benefits, and they are the ones who are suffering the most. It's a challenge that I agree completely. I think most folks on the call will agree that we have to be, we have to be anti-racist in thinking about how to bring forth real change that affects environmental change. So thank you for highlighting that. It's incredibly important. A great work you're doing, Erin, and I look forward to working with you and hearing from you in additional events in the future. Thank you so much.